What if I told you that everything you know about fire trucks is a complete lie? Forget the boring standard red boxes you see on the streets today. In the past, firefighters rode absolute mechanical monsters into battle. We are talking about terrifying fire-breathing steam boilers that showered city streets in sparks, and absurdly tiny half-ton factory responders that literally look like pedal toys from a children's amusement park. Today, we are uncovering 10 of the most bizarre, wildly insane, and 100% real classic fire engines that defy all logic. You will not believe your eyes, especially when we reveal the unbelievable machine at number 1. Smash that subscribe button right now and let us hear those sirens. Imagine the familiar, comforting rumble of a classic yellow school bus, but instead of hauling kids, it is tearing down the Pacific Coast Highway at 60 miles per hour, sirens wailing. That is the essence of the Crown Fire Coach. Manufactured in Los Angeles from 1951 through the 1980s, these rigs look incredibly bizarre. Crown Coach Corporation essentially took their rugged 25,000-pound school bus chassis, chopped the back off, and slapped a massive 1,000-gallon water pump on it. The result was a sleek, rounded, friendly-looking fire engine that completely contrasted with modern blocky apparatus. But do not let that smooth, bus-like exterior fool you for a second. The Crown Fire Coach was an absolute beast on the road. Firing up one of these classic machines meant awakening a colossal, roaring Hall-Scott gas engine, or later a thunderous Cummins diesel producing over 300 horsepower. During the devastating brush fires that frequently ravaged California, the Crown Fire Coach became a legendary micro-story of endurance. Firefighters trusted these 30,000-pound, fully loaded machines with their lives, knowing the bus-derived frame could absorb punishing twists on treacherous mountain roads without snapping in half under heavy stress. While today's fire trucks look like rolling computer servers, the Crown Fire Coach was a triumph of pure analog mechanical grit. It featured an open cab design in its early days, meaning firefighters rode into battle fully exposed to the screaming wind at 50 miles per hour, gripping a chrome handrail for dear life. It is a piece of West Coast folklore proving you do not need to look like a traditional heavy rescue truck to save the day. If you think a fire engine built like a 30,000-pound bus is unique, wait until you see our next classic. Step back into 1947, a time when fire trucks still looked like overgrown pickup trucks with incredibly long hoods. Then, out of nowhere, the American LaFrance 700 series hit the streets and completely shattered the mold. This machine introduced the revolutionary cab-ahead of engine design, pushing the driver entirely in front of the front axle. The result was a wonderfully bizarre, bulbous, flat-faced giant that weighed over 20,000 pounds and looked like a metallic bulldog staring you down. Compared to aerodynamic modern pumpers, the 700 series looks almost cartoonish, with its massive chrome grille grinning widely. This weird, flat-faced design was not just for science fiction aesthetics. It was a desperate, brilliant solution for cramped, chaotic city environments. Before this, driving meant trying to peer over a massive, vibrating hood. The 700 series gave the driver a panoramic view, drastically reducing response times. Listen closely to history and you will hear the deafening roar of its legendary 215-horsepower V12 engine. This monstrous power plant, originally designed for aircraft, could pump an astonishing 1,000 gallons of water per minute, while shaking the pavement beneath its massive, heavy-duty tires. One of the greatest micro-stories comes from the bustling streets of post-war America. Drivers used to wrestling massive steering wheels from miles behind the bumper suddenly found themselves sitting right on the nose of a 10-ton battering ram. It was an intimidating, visceral experience. Riding in the open-air jump seats meant catching every decibel of the mechanical sirens screaming at over 100 decibels. It completely revolutionized the industry, proving that weird designs are often brilliant. The 700 series definitely turned heads, but our next machine was built like a literal tank for gritty East Coast streets. If the American LaFrance was a quirky city cruiser, the Ward LaFrance Ambassador was a bruising, heavyweight prizefighter. Hailing from New York, the LaFrance brand built its reputation on manufacturing heavy wreckers weighing up to 40,000 pounds during World War II. When they transitioned to the Ambassador model in the 1960s, they kept that military mindset. The Ambassador is visually striking for its sheer, imposing bulk. It looks less like a vehicle designed to navigate traffic and more like a 35,000-pound armored personnel carrier painted fire engine red, completely dwarfing the sleek bodies of today. The true bizarre nature of the Ambassador lies in its unapologetic brutalism. It featured massive slab-sided metalwork, heavy-duty diamond plate everywhere, and a front fascia that looked like a scowling brick wall. Underneath that aggressive exterior was an auditory experience like no other. Firing up an Ambassador meant unleashing the guttural, earth-shaking rumble of a massive Mack diesel engine, producing nearly 300 horsepower. When this truck accelerated to its top speed of 55 miles per hour, the exhaust notes sounded like artillery fire. In brutal Northeast winters, the Ambassador was simply an unstoppable force of nature. Consider the incredible micro-story of the New York Fire Department during the turbulent 1970s. The Bronx was literally burning, and firefighters responded to an impossible number of alarms every night. The LaFrance Ambassador was the absolute workhorse of this gritty era. These massive 15-ton trucks were repeatedly battered by debris, driven over broken glass, and pushed to their absolute mechanical limits, yet they refused to die. They were rolling fortresses of steel. Tank-like durability is great for pavement, but what happens when you need to fight fires in the wild? Enter our next military beast. Now we leave the concrete jungle behind and head into the untamed wilderness. What happens when a raging wildfire breaks out in terrain where no standard city fire truck could ever hope to survive? You call in the Dodge Power Wagon fire engine. Born directly from battle-tested World War II military trucks, this civilian version was adapted into one of the most rugged, bizarrely aggressive brush trucks in history. With a gross vehicle weight rating of nearly 9,000 pounds, enormous high-clearance fenders, and aggressive off-road tires, it looks exactly like a military transport vehicle painted bright red. The Dodge Power Wagon was the ultimate unfiltered expression of four-wheel drive dominance. While today's brush trucks are highly specialized luxury off-roaders, the Power Wagon was completely raw. Firing it up meant wrestling with a stubborn, whining flathead inline-six engine producing roughly 94 horsepower and grinding through a heavy manual transmission. Top speed was a screaming, vibrating 45 miles per hour on the highway, but when the massive 10,000-pound capacity winch engaged and those tires clawed into mud, this machine could literally climb mountains. It went where the roads ended, hauling precious water to forest infernos. A fantastic micro-story surrounding this beast comes from the isolated logging communities of the Pacific Northwest in the 1950s. When lightning strikes ignited deep timber, conventional fire engines were utterly useless. Volunteer crews would pile onto the back of a bouncing, bucking power wagon, holding onto roll bars as the 4-ton truck violently smashed through heavy brush. It was never about top speed. It was about relentless, unstoppable momentum through the worst terrain imaginable. The Power Wagon is an American off-road beast, but across the pond, the British had a much tinier idea for wildland fires. If the Dodge Power Wagon is a hulking American heavyweight, the Land Rover Series 2A fire engine is an agile British flyweight that looks absolutely absurd next to a modern fire apparatus. We are so used to seeing fire engines weighing 40,000 pounds that require 2 lanes of traffic. But the Series 2A fire engine weighs merely 4,000 pounds and is barely larger than a modern compact car. Built in the 1960s, this tiny, boxy, incredibly charming machine was designed out of absolute necessity for narrow, centuries-old cobblestone streets in rural English villages. So, engineers took the legendary aluminum-bodied Land Rover and brilliantly crammed a power takeoff-driven water pump, a small 40-gallon water tank, and ladders onto its tiny frame. The bizarre contrast is hilarious, You have all the serious life-saving equipment of a heavy-duty truck squeezed onto a vehicle belonging on a weekend safari. Imagine the sound of its quaint 70-horsepower four-cylinder engine whining at maximum RPMs as it reaches its top speed of barely 50 miles per hour. It lacked the earth-shattering roar of an American V8, but it made up for it with sheer, unstoppable British pluck. These tiny two-ton warriors have a legendary micro-story serving as fast attack vehicles on small private European airfields. When a small aircraft crashed, every second mattered. The Series 2A could tear across bumpy, muddy grass strips, completely bypassing paved roads to reach the wreckage and begin spraying foam long before a massive municipal truck could even navigate the airfield gates. It is absolute proof that sometimes the most bizarrely small package can deliver the biggest rescue. Agile and small is one thing, but behind the Iron Curtain, they built a machine completely alien to Western eyes. Prepare for a massive culture shock because we are crossing the Berlin Wall into the Cold War era of East Germany. The IFA W50 fire truck is a machine that looks fundamentally wrong to anyone used to Western automotive design. Introduced in 1965, this vehicle was the backbone of East German industry. Its fire engine variant is a masterpiece of bizarre utilitarian brutalism weighing roughly 12,000 pounds. It features an incredibly flat, perfectly vertical cabin sitting awkwardly high above the wheels, giving it the appearance of a giant rolling metal storage shed painted faded red. What truly makes the IFA W50 stand out is the chaotic mechanical symphony it produces. Unlike the smooth hum of modern engines, firing up this 6-ton beast was a violently loud event. The four-cylinder diesel engine, producing a meager 125 horsepower, would awaken with a harsh, clattering roar, vibrating the entire metal cabin so intensely that the driver's teeth would chatter. Reaching a top speed of just 55 miles per hour, its mechanical grinding sounded less like a rescue vehicle and more like a heavy industrial farm tractor going to war against the flames. The fascinating micro-story of the IFA W50 lies in its incredible versatility behind the Iron Curtain. These 12,000-pound trucks were designed to traverse deep snow in remote Russian villages and blast through heavy mud in rural agricultural collectives. They lacked power steering, air conditioning, and basic comfort, requiring immense physical strength to wrestle the steering wheel. Yet, to the fire brigades of the Eastern Bloc, this bizarre, boxy contraption was an incredibly reliable lifeline. As bizarre as that Cold War relic is, our next fire engine comes from a luxury sports car manufacturer. When you hear the name Stutz, you probably think of the legendary Stutz Bearcat, one of the most famous high-performance luxury sports cars of the Roaring '20s. So, the idea of a Stutz fire engine is completely mind-boggling. It is like Porsche suddenly deciding to build a garbage truck. But starting in 1919, the Stutz Fire Engine Company actually existed. They applied their high-speed racing pedigree to heavy firefighting apparatus. The result was a spectacularly bizarre hybrid, a massive 10,000-pound fire rig possessing the elegant sloping hood and sporting soul of a luxury racer. Modern fire trucks prioritize massive water capacity, but the Stutz was built for one thing above all else: terrifying breakneck speed. Back in the 1920s, early motor-driven fire engines were notoriously slow. Stutz changed the game by dropping a massive 130-horsepower six-cylinder racing engine into their chassis. Instead of a slow, lumbering rumble, the 5-ton Stutz tore out of the firehouse with the aggressive, throaty, high RPM roar of a race car. It could reach speeds exceeding 60 miles per hour, its mechanical sirens screaming as it drifted around city corners on wooden-spoke wheels. A legendary micro-story from this era highlights how fire chiefs absolutely fought over the chance to ride in a Stutz. Before radio communications, the first company to arrive at a fire took command of the scene. The Stutz engines were so incredibly fast that they frequently beat every other company to the fire, flying down cobblestone streets at speeds that terrified pedestrians. It was a bizarre, beautiful era where luxury racing engineering collided with the dangerous world of firefighting. A sports car fire engine is crazy, but it does not have a giant silver sphere like our next masterpiece. If you want a fire engine that looks like it rolled straight out of a steampunk graphic novel, you have to talk about the legendary Ahrens-Fox piston pumper. Manufactured primarily in the 1920s in Ohio, this machine features a design element so bizarre it is instantly recognizable worldwide. Instead of hiding the water pump underneath the truck, the Ahrens-Fox proudly mounted a massive multi-cylinder piston pump right on the front bumper. Sitting directly on top of that pump was a gigantic gleaming silver spherical air chamber. It looks like a 15,000-pound Victorian science experiment. That giant silver sphere was not just for show, it was a brilliantly bizarre engineering solution called a pulsation dampener. As the massive pistons violently slammed up and down to pump over 1,000 gallons of water per minute, they created harsh shock waves that could physically rip the hose out of a firefighter's hands. The giant silver ball trapped pressurized air, acting as a shock absorber. The sound of a 7-ton Ahrens-Fox in action was a symphony of heavy metal, the deep rhythmic thumping of front-mounted pistons echoing off buildings, accompanied by the roar of its massive engine. The micro-story of the Ahrens-Fox is one of extreme urban power. In major cities with towering new skyscrapers in the 1920s, standard pumps simply could not push water high enough. But the Ahrens-Fox, with its menacing front-mounted piston assembly and massive 6-cylinder engine, was a true powerhouse. Firefighters knew that when this 15,000-pound beast arrived, it could blast a solid stream of water to the top floors of buildings other engines could not reach. The Ahrens-Fox is a mechanical marvel, but before gasoline engines took over, firefighters rode actual fire-breathing dragons into battle. To truly understand how bizarre firefighting history gets, we must rewind to the late 19th century, before gasoline engines ruled the world. Enter the Nott steam fire engine. A modern fire truck is a self-contained, relatively clean vehicle. The Nott, however, was a terrifying horse-drawn chariot that literally hauled a massive upright fire-breathing steam boiler through the streets. Built in Minneapolis, this steamer weighed close to 10,000 pounds and looked like a gleaming brass locomotive stood on end. It was a smoking, sparking tower of superheated water rolling on giant wooden wheels, pulled by galloping horses. The auditory and visual experience of a 5-ton Nott steamer responding to a call was nothing short of apocalyptic. When the alarm sounded, a coal fire was literally ignited inside the boiler while the horses were hitched. As it tore down the street at roughly 20 miles per hour, thick black smoke belched from the towering exhaust stack, and hot embers showered the street. The sound was deafening, the thunderous clattering of heavy horse hooves, the harsh clanging of the warning bell, and the terrifying high-pitched shrieking of the steam whistle. It was a total sensory overload. The incredible micro-story of the steam era involves the stoker, a firefighter who rode on the rear step of this bouncing, chaotic 10,000-pound machine. While the horses galloped at top speed, the stoker was desperately shoveling raw coal into the blazing furnace. They had to build up over 100 pounds of steam pressure so the pump could blast 600 gallons of water per minute the exact second they arrived. They were literally fighting fire with fire. We have seen massive monsters, but absolutely nothing can prepare you for our final tiniest machine. And now we reach the undisputed king of bizarre fire apparatus. After witnessing massive steam boilers and 15-ton behemoths, you will look at the Crosley fire engine and think it is an absolute joke. You will think it is a peddling toy from a children's amusement park. But I assure you it is 100% real. Manufactured in the 1950s by Powell Crosley, a man famous for making tiny economy cars, this fire engine was unbelievably minuscule. Weighing barely 1,300 pounds, it was a fully functioning firefighting machine crammed onto an impossibly small chassis. How on earth did this microscopic half-ton machine fight fires? The bizarre genius of the Crosley lies in its highly specific purpose. It was never meant to fight towering infernos on city streets. Instead, this tiny hero was designed as an indoor industrial factory responder. Powered by a tiny 44 cubic inch engine producing a laughable 26 horsepower, its top speed was completely irrelevant. The whining Crosley could squeeze through narrow warehouse aisles, zip around heavy factory machinery, and deliver a crucial first strike of foam before a small spark turned into a catastrophic multi-million-dollar industrial disaster. The micro-story of the Crosley is one of pure, undeniable charm mixed with serious utility. Imagine a massive factory alarm blowing, and instead of a 40,000-pound giant truck, this tiny 1,300-pound cherry red speck comes zipping across the factory floor at 15 miles per hour. Its miniature siren wails loudly, carrying a tiny ladder and two fully grown men with their knees touching their chins. It perfectly encapsulates the bizarre history of fire engines, proving that bravery, innovation, and heavy-duty firefighting do not always have to come in a giant standard red box. From rolling steam boilers that showered the streets in sparks, to a tiny half-ton factory responder that looks like a children's toy, the history of classic fire trucks is absolutely insane. These bizarre machines prove that human innovation in firefighting truly knows no bounds. Which of these 10 crazy engines blew your mind the most today? Drop a comment down below and let us debate. If you love this deep dive into automotive history, please smash that subscribe button, hit the bell icon, and stay tuned. See you soon!